everyone, and welcome to once again Iceland podcast. I'm your host, Arif Khan, and today we have our special guest, the commissioner himself, Mr. Ahmed Ibrahim Habibi.
Assalamu alaikum, guys.
Welcome, Salam, bro. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, just riding through the motions, I guess.
Nice. So we have, since it's almost summertime, a lot of people missing. I know we've missed last week. That was actually because of some hockey team that has never won in the last 20 years. They were playing, apparently. They still haven't won. But apparently that was more important than having a podcast. But that's a different story.
They won experience. That was probably the only thing they won. Yeah.
2 decades of it. Anyways, we are here now. So let's celebrate that. Some catching up to do. What's this? Canadian Sniper Leafs in 7. Yeah, you know what? Let's just show that. That's probably
one decade too old.
that's I think Khalid. Anyway, so today we want to talk about what happened last week, as well as we'll look at some of the award nominations, and then talk about the upcoming week, I guess, right? The playoffs. So Here's the schedule for today. So let's jump right into it. Okay, so the first game of last week was Iman versus Rida. I don't think any of these games really had any massive significance. Can't speak today. Rida, they had already locked things up, right? So this was more of a tune-up, if you will. But that said, that was a 5-1 win by Iman, which is very impressive.
Yeah, and it speaks to the volume of what you just said, a tune-up. So I think if Iman played the way that they played that game or that game throughout the regular season, their outcome in terms of where they would have been in the postseason would have been better. But meaningless probably to Roda because, like you said, they did solidify in terms of like their spot within the playoffs. But more for Iman to kind of leave on a good note, to say that they were actually a good team built on. Good players around them, and they just kind of ended their season the way every season should end, which is on a good note.
And unfortunately, Iman, I think they were already knocked out the week before. So they had really nothing to lose here. But you know what? Amazing performance by Abdullah Patel, the shadow GM himself. I believe he got like 4 points in this game, right? And he ended up finishing third in league scoring, which is, kudos to him.
And a little fun toast to that is he actually left the wedding without telling his parents, just to play that game because he wanted to pad his stats on that. But I mean, it just goes to show which is more important, a hockey game or going to a wedding.
Hopefully that wasn't his own wedding.
No, hopefully not. But needless to say, I mean, he had a really good showing for that night. I know that this game was, Rida didn't have their goaltender, and I know Maju played in net for them for that game, which is good. I know that Maju was injured late in the second period, so they did play kind of shorthanded for a little bit, which is, I believe, turned out for that first goal that Rida scored. But a great showing by both teams, regardless. But for Iman itself, it just goes to show that they did have the right pieces, but it just never was there where it needed to be.
Iman was quite they had a very up and down season. Abdullah saying hockey before anything else. I like that. I like that attitude. See, that's the real attitude of a GM. I think we should make him a bona fide GM for next season.
We're working on that.
But as I was saying, I think Iman had the right components, like you said, but they just never got together. There was a lot of confusion within their locker, apparently, just hearsay. But anyways, it is what it is. They won 5-1. Hopefully all the players will be back to play for another season. All right. Let's move on to the next game. Next game was Ihsan versus Ikhlas, and this was a barn burner of sorts. 6 for Ikhlas. I think the last goal was an empty netter, so it was pretty much a close game throughout. This one, the only significance would have been if Ihsan lost and Yakin won. Yakin might have had a shot at getting the top seed, but with Ihsan winning, they just locked it up right from the get-go.
Yeah, and I believe I didn't actually watch this full game as well, but I think this also had a goalie replacement. I don't think Klaus had their goalie, and I believe I think Imran probably. I think he was the one that played for that team. But again, a meaningless game for Hassan because they were already locked in. Sorry, and for Ikhlas because they never had all their
The
players
last
showing
last
up.
week as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and not only that, but I believe most of their stars for Ikhlas didn't show up because of the fact that it was a meaningless game on their behalf. But I'm a firm believer that you play to the end, um, regardless of the outcome of what that what that game means to, because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, it carries forward
Mhm.
to the next season as well. But still a great showing by both teams. It's good to see Dawood finally getting the top star. So it's good to see that he's starting to blossom to the player that we know him to be.
If
Um,
Daoud is online, Daoud, please let us know if we've butchered your spelling or name again. David Siomber.
well, I mean, he's the first star, so if he is
Yeah.
listening, I know he'd be the first one that would be chiming in right away. So
Big shout out to Adam Ahmed, by the way. I've seen him play this year. I think he's probably the one of the most fittest guys in the league. The
yeah,
guy's like really really fast, strong, aggressive. But he's also developing a little ball handling skills. I believe Big Brother is helping him out a little bit there. Good pedigree there. So I think if he continues, alhamdulillah, he's going to turn out to be a solid player for years to come.
yeah, and speaking about it's one thing about the game, but it's also the bigger component about the game is your physical fitness as well. So
Yeah.
he definitely has that. Such a young guy, young kid, just doing what he does outside of hockey, which just hustling back, doing the nitty gritty. Outside of the hockey skills itself, but it's good to see him blossoming in terms of developing the hockey skills, which I know that he, within the pedigree that he does definitely
Yeah.
have.
Well, it looks like David chimed in. It's good this time. I'm only here to spell check the name and then Assalamu alaikum, good night. All right, good. At least we got something right. So
But on his name tag, it shows as David C. So I don't know if it's David or Dawood.
I think he's given up at this point. He's just
I
happy
hear
that we
you.
got his last name correct. All right. The game after that was your game, Sabra and Haya, and this ended in a 2-2.
Yeah, so this game I think was more of for us it was more of a message game because for
Yeah.
us we knew that regardless of the outcome of the game that we would end up playing them in the playoffs. So we knew that this was going to be sort of a feeler game in terms of like where both teams
Yeah.
lie because we would play them again twice tomorrow actually. So
Hmm.
I mean the outcome of the game is displayed. It was a 2-2 score, 2-2 tie. So it shows that so sorry Haya was also thinking the same thing in terms of feeling us feeling them out, knowing that we'd be seeing them again. It really was an evenly matched game, to be honest with you. I think from our perspective, knowing that having Maju played the first game, having him rested for our game, that was key, because obviously with Maju, being such a big part of our team and having him, just being on his game was important for us. So you know, I think the scoreboard reflects in terms of like what both teams were looking at because we just wanted to get a feeler in terms of what they would look of what we would look like, I guess, in the
Hmm.
playoffs. But not too many players missing from our end.
Yeah.
We had one or two. I know that they had one or two. So we'll see what happens in the playoffs. But it was a great game. I played in it. It was evenly
Hmm.
matched. I think both teams were evenly matched, but we're going to see a lot of them
Yeah.
tomorrow night. So
And you know what? Both this game and the one after, right, between Haya and Sabra and then Yakin with Taqwa, um, these teams are going to face each other 3 times in 2 weeks,
yeah.
right? So you get to know your teams very well. So this is going to be very very interesting. Um, okay, so that brought us to the last game of the evening. So this was Yakin versus Taqwa.
Yeah.
This is again didn't really matter once Team Red won their game. They sealed the deal. Here, regardless of who ends up where, it doesn't matter because they're both going to play each other. However, it was more like you said to sense how each team plays, more of a tune-up, if you will, right? And in that sense, Yakin, we played pretty hard. Taqwa, I think they were missing Kazi, which was unfortunate because the only thing at stake here in this game was really the fact that Kazi and Chohan, they were both coming into this game tied for the lead with 16 points.
Wow.
Eventually, Chohan did get a couple of points to win the scoring title, but it almost feels like a little unfair that Kazi was not there because I think it would have been fun. But he had a family wedding to go to, so that was more important.
He should have spoke to Abdullah Patel about family weddings. Got a little advice from him.
It was his sister's wedding. He can't just bail out on that.
Yeah, I hear you.
But in this game again, Hussein Malik, he had a really, really hot start to the season, so that kind of cooled down. But then post Ramadan, he picked right off again where he left it.
Good.
Got us some goals. He was all over the place. I think overall it was a solid game for Yakin. Takwa, I gotta say they did outplay us, especially at the end. They were all over us, and if it wasn't for one Ali Khawaja, this game the score would have been extremely lopsided in favor of Takwa, probably.
Yeah, and just tackling on that point, and I guess my point, what I was saying earlier in terms of this game being being a feeler game for what the playoffs will be. Do you think this is something that Tucker will probably learn from this game and say, this is what we need to do better, for the playoffs? Do you think that's
Yeah.
something that they're probably talking about as well, or?
No, they did because after the game we were outside and we talked about it, and Abu even mentioned to me, he's like, uh, "You guys won because of Khawaja. I mean, he just played like Ali Khawaja can." And I'm thinking, yes, it's true, but he is on our team, so yes, that was by design. There's a reason why we got him so early in the draft, right? Because he's a game changer in that sense.
Absolutely.
However, it's also not fair to expect the goalie to bail you out every single game. Our team, we also need to come out in front of him,
Yeah.
and Takwa's going to come out strong, especially with Kazi back. It's a different team.
Yeah, Kazi is definitely a game changer, which is the reason why he's the poster child for our summer season. So
Speaking of poster child,
there you go.
I like it. Well, we're almost there,
We'll
but
go there, almost there.
just to finish off with Ali Khawaja,
Yeah.
because of his performance, he is in fact the One World Halal Foods Player of the Week with 20 saves. I think he made more than 20 saves, but
Well
it
deserved.
it, it, it wasn't just the number of saves; it was the quality. Like some of them were bangers. He was just flying all over the place, glove, blocker, you name it. He saved us there.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's not only the saves, but when he did the saves, you mentioned that the saves were near the end of the game. So obviously
Timely.
that's when teams kind of formulate in terms of seeing the importance, and at the end, getting that momentum in terms of like doing that for your team really should be something that should be commended for
Yeah,
sure.
let's just say the One World Food Halal Player of the Week saved our halal bacon. Hanan's not here. I got to make some dad
Daddy
jokes, you know.
jokes, yeah, I know, I hear you. I'm your only fan. I hear you.
All
Poster
right,
child, there he
so
is.
poster child, there we go, Mr. Kazi himself, the
Yeah,
underrated superstar, as I have dubbed him.
yeah.
So tell us about this. What's going on here?
Yeah, so this for us is actually a great opportunity for players to kind of tune up their games, and we obviously know that the fall season and the winter season is really where we get most of the competition and most of the guys that show up. But the summer league is a summer league. It's a fun league to develop your game. It's a good opportunity for you to get playing time. It's a good opportunity for you, to get that playing time that you probably wouldn't have gotten in the regular season. But it really is, player time overload. And a good opportunity for you to learn from GMs. We do have good quality GM pairings that are coming out for the summer season, so it's a good opportunity for you to develop your game in a non stressful environment.
Yeah.
So I personally love the summer league myself. It's a good opportunity for me to do stuff that I probably wouldn't do, in the fall and winter season, and it's a lot of opportunity for you to get real playing time in a real live game environment.
Yeah.
So the spots are running out. So registration has been open for quite some time. We are filling up very quickly. It's just a matter of time before we actually close registration, and we're looking at closing that probably sometime this weekend because we do need to solidify. How many teams we're getting,
Yeah.
and also just understanding how the schedule will look like, in
Yeah.
terms of making sure that the schedule fits in with everything else that
Hmm.
complicates all that stuff too. But
I
um,
Sorry, I heard there's a lot of guys. I mean, normally you think that for summer league, some of the top players aren't there. It's just going to be a watered down version of the league, but it's not. In fact, a lot of the guys that I spoke to, there's some big names who are returning,
yeah,
who haven't played in a couple of seasons. They're coming back, like you said, whether it's a Salam Cup tune-up or just because they miss Islam, which is
yeah,
what I think it is. You're gonna have some good players. So yeah, please join. You're gonna have a good time in summer.
yeah, and aside from those, those top names that we talk about, it really is a development for the other players because
Mhm.
you're going to get a lot of time. So it's a
Yeah.
good opportunity for you to take advantage of that time, and to learn from it. So, sign up as quickly as you can. Registration is will be closing sometime this weekend. So, spots are limited. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you in
Yep.
the summer, inshallah.
Inshallah. All right. So now let's talk about a fun part, which is awards races. I know you and I, for the last few years, we've done the award ceremony. Some people will remember my turban outfit. Some people will remember the shisha session in your basement where we did with Hamoudi a couple of years ago. That was fun too.
Yeah, it's waiting for me, but it's there. Yeah.
There it is. So, anyways, we're not quite there. This one is not about announcing the winner. This one, we're just going to be talking about who the nominees are. However, there are some awards that we do know already have awards winners because they're statistics based. So, the top scorer is none other than Mr. Adil Chauhan of Team Yakin with 18 points. As I was mentioning, he and Kazi were neck and neck until the last game, but you can't blame Chauhan for Kazi not showing up. Chauhan showed up and he did his thing and he won the trophy.
Good. Well deserved.
Yep. Most goals, Zaid Khaler. And this is, mashallah, amazing to see one of our young superstars in the making, leading the league with 8 goals. I believe he owes Yakin some donuts because 4 of those goals came on the same game against us, I think. But regardless of what it is, it's still very impressive that, mashallah, he takes the scoring title,
Yeah, and it
goal
just
scoring
goes,
title.
just echoing what you're saying earlier about, his stature in the game. Like he's a young player, he's blossoming towards, a player that I'm sure that he will, flourish and get even better. But just seeing him get this award, at this caliber, this early, in his playing career is really, really impressive. So definitely congratulations out to Zay Killer on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Abdullah Patel is saying it's his hero. I thought Habibi was your hero, Abdullah. What's going on? He flip flops a lot, doesn't he?
Loyalty, loyalty, loyalty.
All right, playmaker. I think this is a new award that we're implementing this year. I could be wrong, but we always we have top scorer, top goal scorer, but we forget about the people who are the playmakers who get all the assists. This year, again, Mohammad Kazi and Adil Johan. I think both of them playing defense for the most part. 11 assists, very impressive, right?
Yeah, and it's good, it's good to see that the playmakers were also the top scorers as well. So the playmaking aspect of facilitating the goals, were also the top two, in the goal scoring race as well. So it's indicative of those two players specifically in terms of like, their components of the game, that they can not only fill the stat sheets on from scoring goals, but they're also, fully capable of providing that,
Hmm.
that playmaker component of a game as well. So really,
Yeah,
really kudos to the both of them, Adil and, Mohammed,
yeah.
for sure.
Mobeen is asking you, Habibi, that you look like a telemarketer with that headset. How much for air duct cleaning services? That's a lot of
I,
chatter
I
for
sound
someone who doesn't play in the league.
I know I sound like a pilot. I've been told with this thing. So
Nice. Lowest goals against average is Zayed Agji with 1.44 goals against, which you know what? It's no surprise. We all knew that he's a stellar goaltender, and then being on a team with the top team in the league, really. So it's no surprise that he wins it, but nonetheless, that's a very impressive number.
but you know what was a surprise, Aaron,
Yeah.
is I actually didn't know until I watched him play that he actually has a right-handed glove. I didn't know that, and the story behind it was when he was starting to play goalie at such a young age, that was the
Yeah.
only thing that was available, and it just blossomed from there. So,
Well, whatever
and
he
whatever
does, he
works,
it
whatever
works. Right?
works.
Stop the ball or the puck anywhere you can. So,
Yeah.
congratulations there, Zaid. In terms of division champs, you have the Isan, you have Isan as the Mecca division champ and the Medina division and President Award. Actually, you should call it the Commissioner Award. Is a Rida. So congratulations to Dawood and Kadir, Adil and Zaid, and of course both teams, Isan and Rida. Fantastic job on both ends.
Yeah, obviously the advantage of that is getting that first buy. So that
Hmm.
definitely is, you know, an advantage to them,
Yeah.
if you might add. But we could talk about that when we talk about the playoff format.
Yeah,
But
yeah, we will, because that's one of the slides coming up. And we'll have to remember to talk about the fact that is it really an advantage considering that there's a week. But again, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. We'll come to that in a second. All right, so let's look at some of the other awards here. Let's see what we got here. Let's do it like this. So this is Rising Star. So in the past, this was usually the Rookie of the
rookie,
Year
yeah,
award. But what we've seen is a lot of years there hasn't necessarily been rookies in that sense, right? There's been new players who are in the league, but they've already been playing in other areas. They're veterans. They just happen to be new to Iceland, right?
yeah,
So we've modified it a little bit to really give more of a spotlight to rising stars. And this year we've had a few. It looks like a couple of Maliks and Kalers here. So Zaid Kalera of Rida with also the, I guess, Rocket Richard trophy, if you will, the goal scoring trophy. Hussein Malik, who was leading the charge early in the season, and he almost caught up and tied Zaid with goals. And of course, Ishmael Malik as well, who had a phenomenal year as well. So hats off to these three. You could pick anyone for the actual trophy, and
yeah. Just
it'll be
to just
good.
to remind the viewers out there that there hasn't been a winner yet. This is just
Yeah,
more
this
just
is just
showcasing. Yeah,
yeah. These are the nominees, right? And I guess it begs to also mention that these awards, they go out to the GMs and I believe also the media team, if I'm not mistaken, right? And then there's voting that happens. So
yeah.
I don't know who the winners are. You don't know. Eventually, it'll get tallied up, and we will actually find out when we do the awards podcast soon, inshallah.
Exactly, but that doesn't take away from, again, like you said, RF. It could literally be any of these
Any
three.
of them,
They
yeah,
all, all these three players. I know these rising stars are the future, and they've definitely shown it throughout, this year in terms of like the type of talent that they bring to the league too. So it's good to see them
yeah,
blossoming to to the players that they will become, inshallah.
yeah. And the fact that even amongst the media team, we're debating for all three of them, and everyone, regardless of the fact that you play on a team with them or not, the fact that there's no unanimous consensus about who the winner is just goes to your point, which is anybody can win this one.
Absolutely.
All right. Next award is top defensive forward. So we have the perennial Farouk Sani, who seems to always be in nomination for this award. Ali Wadi as well. I think both Farouk and Ali, they play defense and forward. In this year's case, Farouk played mostly forward.
Hmm.
Actually, he played forward the whole time. He did not play D at all. But a new name to this ballot is actually Hamza Shakil, who
Yep.
new to the league, but mashallah, he's been a really great addition to the league.
Yeah, absolutely, and I believe he was the one more halal winner, one of the weeks. So
Hmm.
I mean, it's good to see the veterans of Islam like Ali and
Yeah,
Farouk getting in there, but it's really even more of a pleasure to me at least to see the guys that are coming in new to the league actually earning the caliber that they are today. Because I know, well, at least for me, it's really keeping the talent in terms of like the newer guys so that they can continue to play in the league. So,
yeah.
congratulations to you, Hamza, Farouk, and Ali. Also, congratulations to you guys. Again, the same with this award as the other awards. It really could be any of the three, but it's good to see, Hamza, getting his name in the hat
No,
there.
for
So,
sure. Usually, we always see Akib Malik for this one.
yeah, there's no
Um,
Maliks here. So,
there you go. The Maliks were for the other Rising Stars.
exactly.
I'll also put a little plug in for my team, a little bias here, but I got to give a shout out to two other guys on my team. Sakib Kokar. He's actually, he could also have been nominated for this. He's had a tremendous season. He's become a really, really strong defensive forward. Like his face-offs, I think it's one of the best in the league. And his stats might not show it, but he's a very, very important part of the team. And the other guy would be Azur Zafar. Anyone who's played against him knows that guy's Energizer Bunny nonstop. So
Yeah, just I don't know where he gets all his energy from, but
yeah, a
mashallah,
lot of
he's
guys could have been nominated here. Which actually also goes to show you that being nominated amongst those three is such a big deal, right, in our league. All right. Best defenseman. So here we have three GMs for their
Yeah.
respective teams: Isan, Yakin, and Ridag.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you started off by, three GMs, I mean, that just goes to show that, these teams are obviously built on defense first. Just seeing, the type of caliber that these three players are. I mean, I would play for any one of them. I would. I haven't played with Kadir, but I've played with Adil and, well, both Adils, and they're. I mean, they're definitely the guys that can definitely um, point guard a whole team
Mhm.
in terms of, getting the ball where it needs to be, channeling that ball, from the back to the front, and they can do anything. And the fact that they're three GMs just basically shows that these three players definitely were built on defense first. And I mean, these teams are really, these guys are really a strong component of
Yeah.
what their teams were built on.
And with Adil, a lot of people say that, well, he's not
Which I did.
Johan,
Yeah.
Jojo here. He's not really the GM. It's Arif who does most of the administrative work, but it's not true. Adil actually was very integral in choosing the team, running the team, any kind of trades we made, and although he's pretty quiet on these podcasts and whatnot, on the floor he runs the show in terms of the defense, which again shows why he's such a good defenseman. Adil Patel, same thing. When I think when he's played, they've pretty much always won. I can't, I might be wrong, but you can see it when he plays. It's a different team. And last but not least, Kadir, my boy, Kadir. He had a tough season last year with injuries and other stuff. So I'm really really thrilled that he just came on really strong, and he's back on top as one of our best defensemen. So kudos to all three of.
Absolutely. And just with this one, with the other two that came before, it really could be any of the three. And
Yeah,
it's like you said before, we don't know who they are, but it really legitimately could be any of the
yeah.
three for sure.
And regardless of who wins, we should also mention that this one doesn't mean the highest point tallying defenseman, right? It just means who's the best defenseman for the team, most valuable defenseman for a given team.
Yeah, and that's a real key thing that you mentioned because it's true. Sometimes teams are not, or so sometimes a player's caliber might not be, just like you mentioned, Sakap Kokar might not be, the stats that he
Yeah.
feels, on the spread, on the game sheet, but it really is about everything else in terms of like providing that guidance, that leadership, in terms of like, like you mentioned, whenever Adil Patel plays, they win.
Hmm.
So it's really providing that outside of the score sheet components that, that gets you, the most valuable defenseman.
Exactly. All right, top goaltender. So we kind of all knew that Zaid Agji would be up there. He had the lowest goals against average. He's definitely one of the best goalies there. But I'm really happy to see these two other names, Yusuf Kapoor and Mohamed Mughal. Yusuf, you know what? He doesn't get enough credit for his playing ability. Very often he's selected near the bottom of the goalies in draft, and for the life of me, I don't know why that is because he's such a wonderful person and a good goalie. Yeah, I'm really glad that he's getting that recognition. And same thing with Mohamed Mogul. He looks like a not like an imposing personality. You look at him in nets as a small guy, a lot of open space, but you can't score on him. You take shots, and he's just like diving
He's
everywhere and making
there.
saves.
He's there. And I just want to remind everyone too that these award nominations were actually done by the GMs.
Hmm.
So there was no hands-on in terms of like any OC,
Yeah.
choosing or anything. Like these nominations were actually voted and tallied by the GMs themselves. But again, I'm impressed definitely with Mohamed Mogul, like in terms of like getting his name in the hat because I don't think there was that much recognition from him or for him, in the last couple of seasons. But I've seen his game flourish
Hmm.
in Iceland at least. I know that he plays in other leagues, but in Iceland at least, in terms of like getting to that caliber where he should get nominated, he should get recognized.
Yeah.
So you're right. I mean, his stature might not be, like he looks like he's smaller than the other goalies,
Hmm.
but he still covers the net. He still is there in every facet and part of the game. So kudos to him in terms of getting that recognition finally from
Yeah,
the
for
GM.
sure. So again, when you compare it to all the goalies, even some of the goalies who were not nominated could have easily been on this list. Just goes to show you how close things were this season. But nonetheless, congratulations to all three nominees and best of luck to whoever may be the winner.
Inshallah.
Alrighty. And last but not least, the regular season MVP. So we already talked about the two Adils, Patel and Johan, again, all three of them are GMs, right? As best defenseman. But again, my boy Mohamed Kazi, the underrated superstar. All of them
Poster child.
are nominated for regular season MVP, and all three defensemen too.
Yeah, and it just goes to show, that they are three GMs, so
Yeah.
that's it's good to see that their caliber in terms of like how important they are to each team. But again, like these three players are any, I mean, they're definitely top players on any team. But
Mhm.
the fact that they're recognized by their peers and they might not get as many points or whatever, but they're definitely three guys that I would definitely build a team around for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And I think one of the ways to see how valuable each of these players are is if you were to, and I haven't checked this, but if you were to look at their win-loss record, I would bet that when they're not in the lineup, these teams have lost or they've tied, right? Like again, Kazi was not there last week, and his team lost 5-1. Johan was there. Same thing with Adil. In the beginning of the season, he missed the first couple of games, and we didn't win those games. So these guys are very important, just like Adil Patel as well. A couple of times he was not there, and the team struggled without him.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's like we said. I mean, these three guys are definitely a very strong component of their teams. So, I mean, it's no secret that they would be nominated for such a award for sure.
Yeah. And you know what? We have a very good comment, which is, how do you leave Kabir? I think you mean Kadir, off as an MVP. He definitely could have been up there, right? Unfortunately, there's only three spots here, and these are the ones that were nominated. And you can make a case for Kadir. You can make a case for several other players. Just can't have so many nominees. But yeah, you're totally right. Kadir could very well have been here, but these are the ones that was selected based on the balloting.
Nominated.
Nominated, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Last but not least, we can go to the next section, which is upcoming playoffs. So as you can see, there's 4 games. Obviously, Ikhlas and Iman, they're not here. They're going to be joining the Leafs on the golf course. But we do have Haya, Sabr, Yakin, and Taqwa.
And ironically, we're both playing in both games. So I mean, so I mean, I'm playing obviously in the Hayat Sabr game. You're playing
Yep.
in the Yakin Taco game. So I guess I could speak for the first game, and I
Yeah,
guess
go for it.
the game that's subsequent after that. But it's. I mean, we were both fortunate to play the teams that we're going to be facing on Friday. So it really gives that kind of like that feeler game in terms of like where we sit, where we are in terms of like the other team and what might come to that. So
Hmm.
we do know from the playoff format of last year that having that one game ahead is really an advantage, or it's a really good buffer, I might say. So in my personal opinion, I think the first game will definitely be a very key important game because it allows you that comfort zone, if you might say. I don't want to say
Well,
comfort, but it allows you that um, I don't know what word to use, so I'll just refrain
well,
from
before you
using any word.
continue, just for the sake of the audience who might not know, you want to tell the audience what the format is, because I think a lot of people don't understand what a 2-game series really means.
Sure, absolutely. So these 4 teams have qualified to the next round of the playoffs. So basically, what it means is the top 2 teams in each division will get a bye, which leaves this playoff format for what's going to be happening tomorrow in terms of like I would say duking it out to see who will play, their conference leaders in the next round of the playoffs. But the way the 2-game format works is the first game is pretty much see what happens. If you
Hmm.
win that first game, then your second game, the other team has to win. But if you win the first game and you tie the second game, that also counts as a win for you.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important for all teams to kind of win that first game. But if it is a tie between the first two, in the first game, then the second game obviously is it's a real live
Yeah.
playoff game in the sense that there has to be a winner. So if that second game it's still a draw, then we'll go into a 5 minute overtime. If it's still a 5 minute overtime, then it'll go into shootout. So
Yeah.
it really is important to win that first game per se. But if it becomes a tie, then obviously the second game comes into play where a true playoff format
Yeah.
will come into
I
play.
think the other way to look at it, one way to look at it, is that it's a two-game series. You get 1 point for a win, half a point for a tie, let's say, right? So
Yep.
if you won the first game and tied the second, you already have 1.5 points. You've won the series. If it's 1-1, each team has 1 point, then you just go for
To
an
have the
overtime to see who wins it. So that's probably an easy way of looking at it.
Yeah, but I and just understand that it's all being done on one night. So
Yes.
I mean that's the most important part. So it's not only finishing that first game, but it's also doing what you need to do, whatever works for you to be ready for that game that you will be playing an hour from that game.
Yeah,
So
and you know what? That's a really good point. That the fact that it's all in one night. To give you an understanding, last year, if you remember, in the finals, it was Sabr versus Ikhlas, and this happened. It was also a two-game series, but it was on different weeks. So week one, Ikhlas won, and then week two, Ikhlas lost the that game, and then they lost in the overtime shootout. But my point is, if you lose, you have a week to recover and think about what happened. Maybe you were missing players, they come back. There's a lot that can happen. But here, it's all in one night,
yeah,
right? So things like attendance, your team's stamina, all these play a major effect and major role.
absolutely. It really boils down on the conditioning, your mental state. There's a lot of components, in this format that wouldn't take into consideration the last game because like you said,
Hmm.
that whole 1 week that whole 1 week hiatus, if you might wait. But like if you lose that first game, uh you're gonna have to go like 200% on that second game, and it's
Yeah,
not only mentally but it's also physically because you don't have that week off. You're playing literally an hour from now. So in terms of like where we sit with Hayat, like specifically about this game, I think the fact that we played them on Friday and the fact that the score was 2-2, it is kind of indicative that the two teams are equal.
hmm,
They are balanced out, but I think with the playoff format, it's not about that one game. It really is the conditioning and how your team will come out, not only on the first game but also in
yeah,
the second game as well.
yeah. And goalies, of course, goalies play such a huge part in any playoff series. Um, so on this night, what do you think is the key takeaway from each team? I know Suber, obviously your team, but put yourself in Haya's shoes. What's their keys to victory?
Well, the keys to victory is obviously looking at what they learned from us on Friday night.
Hmm.
So I'm sure they would be looking just like were looking in terms of weaknesses or something that they could have learned from that game and applying it over to this game. So if I was Haya, I would definitely look at, should it have been 3-2? Should we have won that game?
Yeah,
And if we do need to win that game, what do we need to do to win that game? Just like we're doing the same, like we're looking at it as a 2-2. But what did we need to do to get to that 3-2, to get to that crucial first game victory? So the answer to that is really, in my opinion, is we had the fortunate circumstance to play them on Friday, so we kind of do know, the lay of the land, if you might say, in terms of like how they are.
yeah,
So it's just really, looking at that game, looking at the positives and negatives, and seeing what you could apply from that positive wise,
yeah.
and applying it over to, to this first game, if you
Right.
might say.
So let me ask you on Suber. I know Hosley did a lot of trading and juggling, right? And mashallah, he pulled it out. His team made it to the playoffs, right? They were in dire situations in that locker room. How does that work? Because pretty much you have a different team, right? Do you guys have enough time to gel?
So I can tell you, being one of those players that was traded on that team,
Yeah.
I could tell you that our locker room is extremely positive.
Mhm.
Our group chat is extremely positive. I think Josepha did an extremely well job in terms of like finding out what he needed to get done
Yeah.
and doing it. Some might say he was crazy. Some might say he was a brilliant genius for what he's done. I'm obviously of bias because I'm on that team. I think what he did was smart. He looked at his team, addressed the issues that he needed to get done, and did it. So I and looking at the vibe of the locker room, looking at hunger that we have in terms of
Hmm.
like as a team and what we want to do. We're not satisfied with just beating them or tying them on a Friday. We really are a hungry team, and I think the pieces that Josefa has got in terms of acquiring all that talent. Not to say that the players that were traded off were anything else, but it's just Jose from Josefa's perspective in terms of looking at what he needed to address to get his team to that next level. I think he did it, and I think
Yeah,
in terms of like the hunger that we have in our locker room is there,
yeah,
and then hopefully that hunger would take us to to the next level, if you
yeah.
might add.
So before we move on to the next series, I'll also mention for Haya. I think Haya has a almost like an underdog tone to them. There's a bit of intensity in them, I find, which is amazing. That I think they feel like they haven't gotten the respect that they deserve, and they really want to show it in these playoffs. I know I've talked to some of their players; they're ready to go. Right, they're really going to come out storming. And guys like Luke and Hamoudi, if they can get going, that's going to be a dangerous team.
And I would take the word underdog. I would never consider Haya an underdog by any
Yeah,
means at all. I don't think they're an underdog. I think from the very beginning, I saw that this is a well constructed team from the very beginning. I think
yeah.
in looking at your podcast, we did expect them to be here.
Hmm.
So they were not an underdog by any means. This is where
No,
they were supposed to be.
they're not an underdog in that sense. But I'm saying,
Yeah.
in their mind, they're going into this thinking that, we haven't gotten the respect. We're the underdogs. We're going to show them, and that's a great way to go into a playoff.
Yeah,
So
and I think that is Lukman's hustle. Like
yeah,
he's that blue collar type of player, and he'll give it 100% at any point in time, playing like that underdog
yeah,
mentality that you might say. I think that's just kind of the dynamics
that feels that
of
higher hustle that we always talk
yeah,
about,
that
right?
high hustle, that underdog feeling. But I think this team, it's not an underdog. They're not
No,
they're not to be taken lightly. They were a well constructed team from the very beginning. When you
yeah,
look at with Mufti out, in net, Lukman and on D, they have, and I'm going to mention Salman Khalid because
yeah.
he's definitely a guy that you can't sleep on as well because he's definitely very key to that. So they have the right keys and so the right pieces. It's just
Mhm.
we have the better pieces. So
Cool. So let's quickly talk about Yakin and Takwa series. So obviously they faced each other last week. It was a
yeah.
4-1 win for Yakin. Takwa was missing Kazi. We've already talked about that. But Takwa was dominating, right? And Yakin won really because Ali Kawaja played really well. We can't rely on Ali to play like that nonstop all the time. He has done it, but it's unreasonable to put that much pressure on your goalie. So, what do you think Yakin's points would be in terms of success?
Well,
Keys to
I'm going
success.
to look at it. I'm going to answer your question the other way around,
Sure.
which is, what I think Takwa will need to get on his success.
Yeah.
If they looked at what happened on Friday's game, they know that the MVP of the week was Ali Khwaja. And
Hmm.
going to your point about not relying on your goalie throughout the whole game, I think they should capitalize on that. I think Takwa should really look at challenging Ali Khwaja more. I know that they didn't have Kazi there, so it's really getting that additional shooter that they have.
Yeah.
So it's really looking at, okay, it was 5-1. We really did come out during the last 5 minutes of the game. So let's challenge Khwaja a little bit more because we don't think that it should have been 5-1. We
Yeah.
think it could have been like a 5-5, whatever. So it's really looking at what happened on Friday. So Khwaja was the star of the game. So looking at probably disturbing that game a little bit. For Joaquin's perspective, it really is, again, you're looking at what you guys did right on that Friday game. You guys capitalized on everything that you needed to do. I actually didn't personally watch the game, but from if I was looking at the score sheet, it really is getting out there right away. Because Takwa is, and I do remember hearing on one of your podcasts that Takwa is one of those teams that they're not really a good team in the first half of the game, but they really step up in the later halves. And I know that this was something that you guys have mentioned in many podcasts before, that is how Tuckaway is. They usually, get their groove on later on in the game. So
Yeah.
I think for Joaquin, it's really just capitalizing on that weakness, which is basically, exploiting them right away, getting that lead right away, getting them to be sort of that underdog position, and just kind of like doing what they do, Joaquin doing what they need to do, which is
Hmm.
exactly what they did on Friday night. So
Yeah.
just continuing that momentum in terms of like, learning what you did right on Friday
Hmm.
for Joaquin and just applying it again tomorrow night.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Obviously, if I start talking about Joaquin, this is quite a bit of bias, but um, nonetheless, Adil Johan, he's our top player and MVP candidate, best
So it was Kazi.
defenseman candidate. So is Kazi. Both of them the highest assists, etc. Right. So we got two quarterbacks on both teams. We got Ali Khawaja on one end, and I believe Badger on the other end. Um,
No, I don't think Badger's the
oh,
goalie.
sorry, maybe I'm
Kapoor.
missing. Hmm?
I think
Yusuf
Kapoor is
Kapoor,
their
yeah,
goalie.
sorry.
Yeah.
Badger was on the other one. Sorry, Yusuf Kapoor, who's also a goalie finalist, right?
There you go.
So we got some good goaltending, good defensemen. Yeah, it looks like a really really good series in the making. Um, with Yakin, there's always been issues about attendance. I think we've only had a full team a couple of times this season. When we do, I don't think we've lost, but every game that we have lost, we've struggled. It's really been due to attendance. And not to give anything away, but I think there will be some attendance issues here. It's just a matter of confirming who is coming and who's not. But regardless, one thing that we've already always done is that next man up, right? So if someone's not coming, the next person moves up in the lineup and then they give it their all. So that's the best we can hope for.
Yeah, but just going back to that point, yeah, and not to
Hmm.
toot, your team's horn a little bit, but your team was also crafted in the sense that you did draft pretty well. You did
Hmm.
draft pretty well in terms of like from the number one pick all the way to the bottom. So you do have, the pieces to kind of shuffle your team,
Yeah,
to have that step up uh, uh, luxury, if I might add. But so does Tuckwa.
yeah,
Tuckwa has that as well. Tuckwa has obviously a lot of their their guys that play together all the time, so they have that established chemistry right off the bat. So I agree. This is going to be probably a better matchup in terms of like looking at the what could be the outcome for this one, and I don't think Friday's matchup or Friday's score is reflective of what
yeah,
will happen tomorrow for sure.
yeah. And you know what? I'm going to throw in another thing, which is maybe this is just thinking ahead here, but regardless of who wins in each of these series, they have to face Ihsan and Rida. Does it really matter who comes out of this series? Because those other teams, those two look really strong.
Well, I might add what you mentioned earlier about last year in terms of
Hmm.
like again, like you said, we're jumping ahead of yourselves, and this
Yeah,
is a good segue to that conversation. Those two teams will probably not see the rank because I know the next week after we're off
it's a
because
buy. That's right.
it's a bye week because the rink is facilitated to another group. But
Hmm.
you're right, it's really they're great teams, yes, and not to be taken away. But the two teams that will come out of this, these two series will also be good teams.
Yeah,
But the fact that both teams won't be playing each other for another 2 weeks, it's a brand new series
yeah.
right after that. So
Because a lot of times it happens where you get a buy, but it kind of cools you off.
yeah,
Whereas the
yeah,
team that comes out of this one, they're already fired up. They probably won in overtime or something, and they're in full game mode. So it'll be interesting to see how that works.
yeah, and yeah, and just to touch up on those teams, like you mentioned earlier, they are really good teams. Hassan is
Hmm.
a really great team, crafted from bottom up, and again, a little bit. So whatever happens tomorrow night, you are playing good teams in between, the four teams that we have here, Haya, Sabah, Yakin, and Tokwa, but there's still two other teams that are kind
Yeah.
of waiting for you
Yep.
for the finals for sure.
So there's a question: is will the finals be the same format? And the answer, I believe, is yes. Both the semifinals and the finals will also be two-game series, both on the same night.
Correct.
So yeah, that's and it's by design because we want to finish the season, which has been dragging on for a while, so that we can make space for the summer league that's coming up.
Exactly.
All right, sir. With that said, I think we've covered everything we needed to cover. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Habibi, for joining.
Oh,
It's
thank
always a
you for
pleasure.
inviting me for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Don't be a stranger here. It's your league.
Uh, it's our league. We really do it for all of you guys out there. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely looking forward to tomorrow for sure. I think it's going to be a fun-filled, competitive night,
Inshallah.
and it's definitely one of those games. It's not about the game itself. It's really about the conditioning. So for all the players that are playing tomorrow night, make sure you stay hydrated. Make sure you do whatever you need to do to get well rested. Rest in between, in between your games. But at the end of the day, make sure that you take good care of yourselves tomorrow, inshallah.
Yeah, and I believe from a logistics standpoint, the teams will be able to retain their locker rooms for the evening, right? It's not like they have to leave after the first game.
No. So whatever locker room you're assigned to, you'll pretty much keeping it throughout the whole night. So
Nice.
yeah, so that's the luxury of that. But again, it's my advice is, especially if you're playing a game and you're sitting out that game, is don't sit in the locker room. I mean, your locker room is just really there to store your clothes. You do what you need to do to make sure that you're still active, um, even between games.
All right, man. All right, sir. I believe your shisha awaits you, so I won't keep you from that. And I'm gonna go watch some playoffs that doesn't include the Leafs, which is always a pleasure.
Oh, RF, I don't know what to tell you.
All
Well,
right,
thank you
gentlemen.
so much for having me.
Everyone, salam alaikum. Take care.
Alaikum salam. I'll see you guys tomorrow, inshallah.
Inshallah.